to explain it. I think that the kind of trajectory I've been on is still a very common trajectory today because I taught for a year of creative writing at Ateneo de Manila University, and a lot of my students have similar beginnings to mine.
Mm.
If the question is about how did I get into writing speculative fiction, I've noticed a trend. I don't know if it's a trend actually, but I've noticed something that I had in common with my students who were also writing it. And we all said that we are writing to escape.
Mm.
And that's actually a resummation of a very popular Ursula Le Guin quote that we write to escape, and escaping is one's duty, because if you're trapped, then it is your duty to escape. So, but what are we escaping exactly? Actually, my boss asked me that. These kids are always saying what they're escaping something, but what are they escaping? And he was saying that in the context of if they're writing their thesis, they need to be able to explain what they're escaping, which I think is difficult to see when you're that young. But now that I'm a lot older, I think I know. So a lot of us kids come from really traumatic childhoods, and when a lot of bad things are happening to you simultaneously, you end up wanting to escape to impossible worlds, worlds that you can control, even in just your imagination, because that's the one place you are in control. Sometimes they want to escape into horror, which is also under speculative fiction. So I think it depends partially on the bend of your personality. It also explains why, for example, there's a lot of fantasy written in World War II, like Narnia and Lord of the Rings. In some ways, we're all trying to escape, but not in a way that we can't face reality, because the best fantasy works still end up facing the things we were escaping in the end.
That's a wonderful definition, a wonderful take on that, because I don't read a lot of fantasy per se, but what I like about it and what I'm attracted to is the notion of possibility, where you just said that you have students that were in some very traumatic, impossible type situations, and maybe the escape is the escape towards possibility.
Mhm.
What's possible in the imagination, what's possible. I think it was James Baldwin that said if you can describe your environment, you could change it. Whereas I guess if you can create a new environment, perhaps that's something that can become reality and you can touch other people. Can you talk maybe just about maybe your own take on speculative fiction and what your own definition of that is? Because I think there are folks that might be a little unclear on it, especially those that write literary literary fiction. Maybe what your take on it is.
Hmm. My friend Victor had definitions for each of them yesterday, and I wish I had written it down because they were so good. But like, I'm gonna try and recreate what he said. So, speculative fiction covers fantasy, science fiction, horror, and a lot of other in-between genres. And there's always, I would say, an element of the impossible or the improbable. It gets a little dicier when we talk about science fiction because a lot of the things that we think are improbable have become probable. In fact, these days I'm somewhat struggling to write science fiction because the
Mm,
future's already here.
yeah.
But
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah, pretty much.
yeah.
But so I would actually say because the argument for, let's say, someone who of a more literary bent is like, but all of literature is about asking what if. Mm, I feel like with speculative fiction, the what ifs are not only about your characters and about the situations they get into, the what ifs extend to the settings that they are in.
Mm,
That's I think that is the thing that strikes me the most about speculative fiction. I feel like in no other fiction are characters interacting so well with their settings. So as the settings are technically characters as well.
I guess world building. You know, I had a one of the advisors at Vermont College um, talked about setting. He had a pretty good lecture. He called it the um, he it was called setting the um, hydrogen atom of fiction. That's what he called it, the hydrogen atom of fiction. And one of the examples he gave was the story of Adam and Eve. He said that if you took Adam and Eve out of the garden, you just, have the story of a bickering couple. I thought that was very funny. Or if you took Noah out of the ark, basically if you take him out of the flood, you have just a deranged shipbuilder. Um, Vida, I'm gonna pause this real quick, okay? If you can hold on one
Yeah.
second, I'm gonna pause this. Okay, so you had mentioned that you were at the Philippine Book Festival. I'm assuming was that in Manila or was that in another?
Yeah, it's in Manila. Usually it is. But there are other regional literary festivals I
Mhm.
would love to go to sometime.